evening. Good evening, everyone. We are going to call this meeting for the Personnel Commission to order. Mr. Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Yes, of course. Chairman Davis?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Goldstein?
Present.
And Commissioner Roeder?
Here.
All right, excellent. We have established the quorum. We'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, and that is public comments. We allow 15 minutes for public comments. So if you have a public comment, please raise your hand and we will turn the mic over to you. And I think that there was the person who was under the Stack Community Schools, they were asking if they could do a public comment. So this would be your time to do a public comment. But you'll need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Veronica Valerio. I'm the former principal of Sylvia Mendez. I was there for 9 years, and I would just like to speak on behalf of Sylvia Mendez and the community there who is in favor of allowing their interim secretary, Brianna Leja Garcia, to please be able to take the secretary exam and then also to be considered as the secretary there at Sylvia Mendez. I've known Brianna for 9 years when I was a principal there, and I met her as a student. And so I just want to strongly advocate on her behalf because as a student, she came in informing me that she had been at the school since preschool. And so she had been in Berkeley Unified School District since preschool. And then I hired her as a kindergarten aide to work at the school site because I just felt she had such a great capacity and a skill set as a leader. And as an advocate for students and families, she was a great communicator. She was always flexible, timely, willing to be there on staff to support our students, our families, and the community in general. And so Brianna has been there since her infancy. And so I think that I know that we have rules, but I think that we can also be very timely and flexible in our own practices to really hire from within and to consider candidates who have been with us as students, family members, and community members who are now, we are trying to pull through the ranks and recruit from within to make, to give her the opportunity to grow and to learn. And honestly, I feel that Brianna has the capacity and the skill set to even be a principal there one day. So, and I've absolutely told her that. I said, hey, when I'm done and I'm gone and retired, I'm looking to you, Brianna, to lead this school. And so I'm advocating on her behalf that we be flexible in our rules and to allow somebody who has been there in the community as a student and now as an employee to be able to take the role as the administrative assistant at Sylvia Mendez. So I'm just here to advocate on her behalf. And Tim, saludos a la familia.
It's so good to see you, Principal V.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Ms. Brazil.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brazil McIntyre, and I am here in support of allowing Ms. Brianna Garcia to test for the office clerical position that she's been working in. And again, really, I think Ms. Valerio did a very good job in encapsulating all of the support and feelings that we really feel about Brianna. She really is a worthy candidate. I've worked with her in the after school program for years. Again, knowing her from her being a student at that school to then moving on to coming back and working within our after school program. And then also just her always really just showing a real interest in learning more and performing at a high level. She's very, very competent and very careful about her work, and that is very appreciated. And so, yeah, I've trained her personally in many of these clerical type duties. She has done just all kinds of work for Learn. She's helped us out in the summer. She also has stepped up as a program specialist, as a substitute program specialist. And again, just to reiterate the fact that it is, Brianna is someone who is completely embedded into that community, and she has a value that really is uncomparable for anyone, coming in and being able to really establish those relationships and just also be capable of the work. So again, I'm in full support of this. She has worked with me in many occasions in different clerical capacities. Again, she can do spreadsheets. She's worked with spreadsheets, data entry systems, and management systems. She has also, been enrolling families on our behalf and helping them navigate systems, as well as her bilingual, status makes her also very invaluable in being able to help families navigate these challenging situations that kind of are coming, whether we conform or not. And so again, I just want to say that I am definitely in support of that, of her being allowed to test. I think she would perform well on the test, and is very, very capable. So with that being said, I will hope for your support on that. Thank you so much. And also our Zenor Davis family, nice to see you up there as well.
Good to see you, Ms. Brazil. Thank you. Mark.
Mark Ramia here. Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes.
me? Okay,
Yes.
great. Mark Ramia here, Brooklyn Unified School District Instructional Assistant. I'm requesting the Ed Code or policy designated to leaving classifieds in classrooms along with students. It would be helpful to know the amount of time that's allowed and under what circumstances. Student academic minutes can be impacted in some cases, and the safety and well-being of all should be considered. This has been an issue that administration has not properly addressed. I need a response from this body. I believe that a teacher leaving a classroom alone with instructional assistants during certificated teaching time impacts students' learning time, especially if teachers think they can go out of a room a few or several times during the class. The IAs are not supposed to be in charge of certificated teaching time and in charge of learning minutes on the clock while teachers are away. Quite some time ago, Berkeley High School considered a definite no-no. Now some teachers very easily just walk out of class time, leaving students with an IA almost as if without a second thought. At another point in time in the past, IAs and the school security officers collectively over a period of the school year used to cover quite a lot of teaching time for the teachers, and the administration seemed to depend on this. Recently, administration is now stating that teachers can leave the classroom for a brief period of time. And I've been informed recently that one interpretation of the Ed Code is that the district is liable should something in the classroom happen to an IA when they briefly left the room. However, within the last few years, two classified employees were fired or placed on administration to leave based on a claim a student made when the teacher was not present. If we had legal clarification, we would be able to clearly distinguish between being directed to perform certificated duties and actually performing classified duties. Topic number 2, I was told by special education program manager Roberta Craig for the special education that the special education administration at Berkeley High School is doing something new in the way that it manages special education there. There's confusion because the administration is giving case manager teachers supervisorial duties. I've not heard anything from the union about a ratification of the BUSD changing its procedures and special ed school policies. Third topic, Berkeley High School administration is asking employees to work during off-duty times. Administration has to give time for IAs and for employees to do things during the workday. They are telling employees to work on off-duty times and to fill out timesheets. Off-duty is off-duty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And so I think this will be our final public comment from Maria.
Hi, good afternoon, elected Personnel Commission members. I'm Maria Carriedo. I'm the interim principal of Silvia Mendez, and I'm here today to ask you to please reconsider allowing a BUSD native, Brianna Aleja Garcia, to reapply and take the administrative assistant 2 position bilingual test. Unfortunately, she was not able to show 5 years of experience in a clerical or administrative assistant position, and her application did not qualify. However, she has been in our district since preschool, as you heard before, as a student, and after graduating from Berkeley High, she then returned to one of her schools she attended, which is here, Silvia Mendez, to give back to her community, which is as of 5 years ago when she came back to work, as officially work. Not only did we, BUSD, educate her and help her become the amazing she is today, but we also allowed her to work in many positions these last 5 years. One of the reasons why she worked many positions because she is capable and hardworking. She has so much potential, and even when she was not looking for certain positions, the district would look for her and put her in these positions because of her talent and knowledge. Now, with this said, I ask you to please reconsider her 5 years of BUSD employment and qualify her for the position she is subbing for at this moment, the administrative assistant 2 at Silvia Mendez, the school she attended since she was 5 years old. She began volunteering, as you heard from Ms. Valerio, at the school when she was a young BUSD student. And for the past 5 years, she has worked in many positions as an IT, as a tutor, a program specialist, clerical support, and today she is a substitute for the admin assistant 2 position. Currently, as the admin 2 assistant substitute, she has been doing an extraordinary job. The quality and quantity of work she performs is above and beyond. She knows a community and the systems the school and the district has. As a new administrator at this site, and also as a member of this community the last 8 years, I have seen what the school has gone through in regards to having an administrative assistant and how critical this position is. Last year, the site did not have an administrative assistant for half a year, and we suffered. Why should we go through this again when there's a qualified person already in this position, and more so a person that meets the qualification that the district speaks about when we say we want to support our classified staff to grow and get promoted from within? The district has trained her well, and we should support her on applying and go through the whole process of taking the test, which will help us identify if she is ready for this crucial position at a school site. Even if it's not Silvia Mendez, but at least allow her to continue to perform at this high quality performance, thanks to her work experience in this district. Thank you for taking the time of hearing me and hearing everybody who's in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maria, and thank you all for your public comments. We'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, approval and adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any questions, concerns? Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on our consent agenda, I would just like to pull very briefly items 7C and 7D for a brief question that I have regarding those.
Okay, 7C and 7D. Vice Chair?
Nothing for me.
Okay, and so can we approve and adopt those minutes with the pulling out of C and D?
So moved.
I'll second.
And I agree, so we will do that. And now we're gonna go to item 5 on the agenda, approval of meeting notes. We're approving the minutes from our August 30th meeting, regular meeting. Any,
I did not have any changes.
I have no changes and only gratitude to Sarah for putting together minutes from a very long meeting. Thank you.
yeah, I second that, thank you, because that's a lot. And so then, yeah, so we are, can I get a motion to?
Sure. I'll motion we approve the meetings from August 30th meeting.
Second.
And I agree. All right, so we are going to go on to item 6 on the agenda, and that is reports. Starting off, do we have any reports from the union? Mildred would like to give a report. There you go. Mildred, you're on.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. I wasn't sure if, I know Jocelyn said that she was gonna try to make it. So, just briefly, because I am on the agenda as well, but I really would like to say, I thank everyone that has come here today to speak on behalf of our member Brianna from Sylvia Mendez. We have been talking a lot with, the commission and with HR just to see what we can do better as a district to make sure that we're doing what's in the best interest of, our employees to be able to promote within. So it's great that, everyone sees the ability and knows that Brianna would be a good choice for Sylvia Mendez and all the support that she is receiving, because the union also agrees and supports Brianna and having the opportunity to be able to test for that position. Another thing, I didn't have an opportunity to let you all know that, and that I know when we left off in June, we were talking about the class and comp study and our plan. And I wanted to let you all know that the union did have an opportunity to have a couple of days where we met with members from phase 1, and anyone was welcome to come from phase 2 to discuss any concerns and questions that they had regarding the class and comp study. And that was very successful. We received a lot of feedback. And yes, Sarah, I will be sending you a list of those job classes shortly. We had a meeting about that, and I'm sure that Sarah will have that for tomorrow's meeting, but I just want to let the commission know that we indeed did meet with members from phase 1, and it was really successful. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mildred. Any questions?
None.
All right, great. So then we'll go on to the district. Do we have any on here from the district who would like to give a report? And it doesn't look like we.
I believe Samantha does. Sorry.
Hello. Hello, commissioners. I'm sorry, I'm virtual today, as opposed to being there in person. I wanted to make sure that the commissioners saw that we did take to the last board meeting the request to formalize the need for the designation of the OFI positions as bilingual. And that was approved, and I thank you for it getting on the agenda for tonight. We also are continuing to move forward with making sure that we are making progress in the class and comp study, as well as addressing issues as they come up this school year. One such issue that you may not be completely aware of is that we have younger and younger kids attending our preschool programs and our TK programs due to the universal pre-K, TK initiatives started by the state. Some of these kids need toilet training still, and so still are in diapers. So we have signed an MOU with BCCE to authorize a 10% out of class for ECE IAs and IAs who work in TK classrooms who have to do diapering. We will, when the class and comp study is in the stage of negotiation and meet and confer to actually make changes to the job descriptions, we will be making a proposal to the union to make this a permanent change, which will come with an increase in pay. But I wanted to make sure that the commission was aware of this. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Samantha. Moving on to commissioners' reports. Commissioners, do we have any reports? Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's see, I had three quick things, but first, with respect to what we just heard regarding Brianna Garcia, I'm not familiar with her recruitment or the situation at all, and I doubt if the other commissioners are. But I guess two things in light of all the glowing representations and statements with respect to her, and also the union's support. I would suggest one is that our secretary, Mr. Castillo, take a look again at the minimum qualifications. It sounds like there's a period of time for experience in admin or clerical duties, and that Ms. Garcia doesn't quite meet that minimum requirement. However, as was brought up in our last meeting, as a matter of fact, that there are multiple paths to that some of them may be non-traditional to nonetheless meet the minimum requirements. We still have to, I hope that everybody understands, we still have to follow the merit rules that are in place. We have to follow the minimum qualifications that exist. There's nothing that our secretary, our executive director can do if an individual just doesn't meet the minimum qualifications. We cannot just simply break the rules for one person. However, with that said, I think it is conceivable, at least, that there may be ways of meeting those rules that might just be a little bit more flexible and a little bit non-traditional. So I would suggest that our secretary look into that, number one. And number two, there is the ability, if Ms. Garcia has not been able to meet the minimum qualifications according to our staff, that she could appeal to the commission based on all the information that she could provide, and the commission could take a second look at the situation. So those are two possible avenues. The other things I did want to bring up, one has to do with, I'm very proud of our commission staff to say that in the month of August, there were 18, a combination of 18 new hires, promotions, and one rehire, 14 new hires and 3 promotions. That's extraordinarily good. And it's a testament to the hard work and abilities of the commission staff. The other thing I wanted to say is that we are moving forward still on our merit rules project. The executive director and I meet regularly, almost every week, to go over a section, and I think we'll be in a position relatively shortly to reconvene our special meetings so that the public and stakeholders and the commission can have an opportunity to review our work and basically do a first draft. It's obviously very time consuming, it's very complicated, but we're definitely slogging through it. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was that on October 10th at 4:30 in room 126, the commission will be holding a special meeting to discuss vacancies in the district and hopefully do a deep dive into understanding what the vacancies are, where they are, what their causes are, and if conceivably any remediation can be done. This meeting will also be on Zoom. And so I invite everybody to come to the meeting either in person or on Zoom and provide your input. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Roeder. Vice Chair?
I do. I have a few things and I'm going to have to go first next time. Commissioner Royer took a whole bunch of my items, which is probably just as well. Maybe the thing I'll speak to is we have talked several times at this meeting about AB 1699, which is on the governor's desk now, and I think probably will be signed. And that will mean some really big changes for how merit commissions operate. And if we just look at what happened today with respect to the advocacy for Brianna Garcia, I'm still not sure I can predict exactly what will happen, but I think it actually will limit us further in what we can do in that respect. So what I am hoping and urging is that our union partners have a good understanding of 1699. And if they have provisions that they are interested in negotiating as part of the CBA with respect to this, we are about to embark on, that phase of things is where I think we're coming. Otherwise, the commission complies with Ed Code law, and Ed Code law is about to change in this respect. And it will be a pretty substantial change from how we operate. That meeting on the 10th, the vacancy meeting, I'm just going to support what you're saying. This is something that will also be strongly affected by 1699. Once it goes into, what's the word? It becomes effective, I guess. And I'm guessing it'll be effective the first of the year in 2024. I forget if that's the effective date for that. I'm not sure if anybody here knows. So understanding our vacancies and then understanding how we want to address it, near term and longer term will be important. This will be an important meeting. Lastly, I'll just mention that the Berkeley Public Schools Fund is having an event on the 21st. And if you are interested in understanding what not only what the BPSF does, but also what they understand to be the gaps, even with BSEP, even with a well-funded school district, this will be important to attend because we're about to enter a pretty rough budget cycle with respect to funding from the state. And this is a good way to get informed.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I think you and Commissioner Roeder kind of covered all of the business items. So I will leave my report, and it's more of a comment than it is a report. I just want to just share my appreciation for everyone on this commission, everyone, staff, and everyone who attends these meetings. I appreciate that everyone who comes to these meetings are all believers in equity, inclusion, and belonging. I know that, we have some pretty big discussions here when it comes to the well-being of our classified staff. And so I know that when people come in, and especially when they are advocating for those folks, they come in, I believe, with good intentions and what they are trying to accomplish in making sure that classified staffs are being taken care of. I just want to make sure, that we're just always aware that, in our passion for whatever it might be, that we are careful not to not to say things that make it sound as if we're pitting one group against another, because that's not what anybody who's attending this meeting is about. Everybody wants everybody to be able to thrive within BUSD. And so I know that no one intends for that to happen, but I can even say for myself, we get passionate about what we are advocating for, passionate about what we're speaking on. But I just want to make sure that we are always being aware that we want to make sure that our comments are not, doesn't hit other folks thinking again that we're pitting one group against another, because that's definitely no one's intention on this commission or for the folks who join these meetings. And with that, I will yield the floor to our personnel director.
Thank you, Chairman Davis. So I guess I would ask the commission, I do, since we do have so many folks here advocating for Brianna, if it's okay, I can speak a little bit to it, because again, I never know who's going to come to the meeting, and I can only speak to things when they come up sometimes. So would it be okay before I get into my report to speak a little bit about this, since Commissioner Roeder and Vice Chair Goldstein had a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, I wanted to say that no one advocates more for the person who is dedicated to an institution, dedicated to our schools, dedicated to making sure that they are within the community and promoting up. I am all for that, 100%. But let me kind of speak to what we control, or specifically what I can control and what I can't. It's the district who decides the positions. It's the district who basically has said, this school will have these positions. That's not a choice I make. All of the job descriptions, even now, even though we have a class and comp and we're looking at all the positions and reevaluating to make sure they accurately represent what the needs are, there's still a negotiation. So you have to look at every single job description as something that has been negotiated in terms of duties between our labor partners and the district. So it's not up to me to decide what I can ignore and what I can't. Fundamentally, I think that there's the dilemma for me, how because I spoke to Brianna, I spoke to Maria, I spoke to a lot of people about the situation, and it comes up time and time again. But my solutions moving forward are to design a succession plan for your school or all the schools or district-wide. I don't think, and I've brought this up before, not just to our labor partners, but to anyone who listen in the district, because to truly address promotions, you have to start looking at what that succession plan is. And ideally, succession plan meaning you start with the folks that are leaving and you work your way backwards. Again, these are proactive solutions. This isn't. So now we're at the point where someone who is respected and admired and everybody's rooting for her, she doesn't meet the MQs for the position that exists within the school. It is my responsibility at that point to be the neutral party, to support the minimum qualifications that have been, again, bargained, that the district need has identified as what that need is at that school. And I am not in a position to make exceptions. I can't just pick and choose because folks are advocating. The other thing I would say, and again, it pains me to say that, but that is my job here. My job here is to be the neutral person. My job is to be the person who's agnostic and just goes by the ed code and the rules and the process and making sure that the examination process is fair. That said, everyone here knows that we have made, I have personally at least 3 or 4 times disagreed with my own team and moved people forward. So it's not like we haven't, to Commissioner Roeder's question, we go above and beyond. What we can't do is go beyond what's in the minimum qualifications or any part of the exam, because the commission has selected me to be that person who makes sure that all of those rules are followed for everyone. The last thing I'll say in closing is on this topic is, if there was a science class, then that science class required a science teacher with a science credential. And there were 11 people advocating for John Smith, who does not possess a science credential. We wouldn't be here. It would be the same conversation on certificated as it would be on classified. So again, I don't say this with any, pleasure at all. I talked to Brianna. I think she was extremely nice on the phone. I have tremendous respect for Maria. I have tremendous respect for Veronica, Sylvia Mendes, and the district. But at the end of the day, those MQs are going to be applied to everyone, regardless of the history or how much they're liked or not liked. And that is what the merit system exists for. So again, like I said to Debbie, like I said to Maria, if you want to pick my brain about what I believe a succession plan should look like, I'd be more than happy to have that conversation. But we are where we are, and there's really nothing else I can do about that. So again, I'm here to be a team player, to look at solutions moving forward. But in this particular case, I can't undo the MQs, nor can I change the requirements of an exam based on the fact that everyone really loves one person who didn't meet the MQs. And that's unfortunate, but that's my role. That said, I think I'll just go into my report. And again, I want to actually start, and Commissioner Roeder mentioned the hires. I wanted to start with that because I think I don't do this enough, and someone brought it to my attention today. And I think it was a really good point. We do a lot, my team, your team, Commissioner's team, work really hard, and the exam team is fantastic, but none of the hiring gets done without our partners in HR, and they're just a phenomenal group of individuals. They're a phenomenal team, and I personally love partnering with everyone in HR. They're really great to work with, and I think I counted 28 new hires, 6 promotions. That is an enormous amount of work to be done, and a lot of people chasing and a lot of document chasing, and somehow they get it done with a smile. So thank you, HR. I think you're great, and we really appreciate you. So we did have, I'll start with the hires. We had 28, I count 28 hires in August, 6 were promotions. For as far as our exams, we had a total of 254 exams. 71 were training and experience, 151 were written, 26 were oral, and 6 were performance. Again, another stellar month. I think that being downstairs and having a dedicated office now, I get to see this firsthand, and I will tell you, I really enjoy being a part of a lot of these discussions, the Brianna discussion, the other discussions that we have. We're very involved, and we're happy about that. But again, another stellar month of exams. October 9th is classified Professional Development Day, and I am going to be taking our team to Parker Street, and we're going to be doing our retreat there. And the subject of our retreat is going to be twofold. The first half is going to be our exam process and how we can tighten our security around our exams. We're looking at a very, very good solution for that, but obviously we need to talk it over as a team. We do need to tighten our exam processes as a whole, so we're going to dedicate the first half of the day to that. And then the second half of the day, I think that we're going to talk about how we do try to do what we can within the rules, what they look like, how we can provide a good service model. So I look forward to the 9th. And again, we're going to be visiting our friends John Calisa's staff over on Parker Street that day. Vice Chair Goldstein already mentioned it. In May, it passed the Assembly. In September 13th, it passed the Senate, and it has been sitting on the governor's desk since the 21st. I share the vice chairperson's concerns. I share, what I think 180 other school districts' concerns. I think this will have an effect, and unfortunately not a good effect on our classified staff. So I know that Samantha and I have talked about looking forward and trying to have the PC team and the HR team work together to try to see what this process even looks like. But it will be challenging, to say the least. So we'll see what we can do there. One of our advanced step requesters that we did approve an advanced step request for submitted additional materials after the fact. So I promised I would mention it, and I think I mention it now in public records so that I can talk to the three of you when the time comes about what a process would look like, an approval would look like in a case like that. We have two other items on the agenda tonight that are also regarding our rules. Well, one is regarding our rules, one is regarding our exam. But as Commissioner Roeder mentioned, we are working on those rules. And I think that one of the things that will be of help to everyone is that if we are explicit in our rules and not implicit. So this is definitely one of those that I'll be discussing with the three commissioners and putting some very clear-cut language around the advanced step and the initial placement and what that looks like. I think I'll move on to my class and comp report. So the steering committee is reviewing. So I should mention right off the bat that we have phase 2 and phase 3 kind of. Phase 2 is phasing out, no pun intended, as phase 3 is already started. So I should mention that we're not quite done with phase 2, and we've already started phase 3. So this is all being done simultaneously to meet that November deadline. Right now, the steering committee is reviewing the job descriptions and the JCQ and the employee and supervisor interviews. The steering committee did receive the track changes on those job descriptions, which was something that was mentioned earlier, is to be able to see what the changes were. So we are going to be sharing that after the steering committee has reviewed it, share it with our labor partners so that they can see the original versus what the proposed changes are. The next step in phase 2 is to send out the draft, and that draft will include those track changes. The job descriptions will then go to the employees and supervisors for review and additional input. Again, this is still phase 2, and these should all go out next week and be returned to our office by October 10th. So phase 2 will probably end just about midway through phase 3. So EHA is going to be presenting a phase 2 report in a special meeting in early November. And we're going to have 2 meetings in November. One is the phase 2, and then the second will be the final report, which will include phase 3. I'll get to finishing up the study in a second. The JCQ period is over, and we have the stats, and it's 64 64 JCQs were sent to employees. 34 of them were completed. That's approximately 53% participation in phase 3, which is good. 12 of the 64 are the after-school program site coordinators. And I should mention that because that's a brand new job and a brand new unit. And so some may have not chosen to participate because it's so new. EHA, the data download for phase 3 is forthcoming. And actually, Sarah made a point to let me know, to let you know that if the data ahead of the meetings would be helpful, especially since we're nearing the end. We'd like to start doing that so that the presentations aren't the first time you have this data, because I think it's going to be very important regarding your recommendation at the end. The interviews are all going to be completed by early October. Again, we're looking at October 20th as the completion date, anticipated completion date for those interviews. And in regards to finishing up the study, we are going to be sharing phase 2. EHA is going to be doing that in early November. And what we hope to present at an update to the board. I'm going to be working with Samantha on that, but we're going to be doing an update regarding this project to the board at the November 15th meeting. And phase 3 and phase 4 reports will be shared at the regular PC meeting in December. And hopefully by then you have been given a lot of this data so that you can make an informed recommendation, with the goal being that the PC approve the recommendations at that December meeting, so that EHA and myself can take that report to the board in January for approval. And again, that would be followed immediately by negotiations. So that is my very long-winded report. Thank you for your patience, for listening. And again, thank you for, this is the first time we're doing this, where I'm doing this remotely. I do appreciate that, and I do appreciate being in a place where we can do this. I'm a strong believer in hybrid work whenever you can do it. And so thank you for that. And thank you to the team that's there to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Vice Chairperson?
I just want to make sure I understand the timetable right, that I heard this. EHA is going to make presentations to the steering committee in early November for phase 2, and later in November for phase 3 to the steering committee. The PC will get some advance information so that at our December 13th meeting, we're in a position to vote on recommendations, is what I thought I heard, such that labor negotiations on these things can start in January. Do I have the cadence right?
You do, except the presentations will be not to the steering committee, but they'll be, so October 20th is when all of the deadlines kind of converge. So by that time, the steering committee would have reviewed the job descriptions. The interviews would have been done in October. And at that point, the interviews that are going on now would be completed by October 20th, so that there would be one report to you regarding phase 2 in early November, and then a second presentation at the actual commission meeting regarding 3 and 4. And then we would take that recommendation from the commissioners. EHA and I first would go to the January for approval. But in November, the one date that I'm missing is that Samantha and I are going to be presenting to the board a report on the class and comp meeting. I know it's a lot of dates. I'm sorry. I'll be sending these to you, but
Thank you.
we're trying to line them up. I
right.
just need to get, anyway, that's the projected timeline.
Okay, I think I'm hearing it, that sometime in early November, the phase 2 report to the PC. So I guess we're expecting a special meeting. The final report at our regular meeting on the 29th is what I think I'm hearing. And, then a presentation to the board also in November, and then ideally recommendations voted on in December by the PC. And I understand there are a bunch of interim dates too. I'm just trying to make sure that in terms of holidays and things, I keep clear what I need to keep clear.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rhoda, do you have any? All right. All right, thank you, Secretary Castillo. Let's move on to conference item 7. And that is our ratification of eligibility list. We know that we're pulling C and D for further discussion. If there are no questions or comments about A, B, E through H, can we get a motion to ratify?
I move those are be ratified.
And I'll second.
And I will agree. And so now, let's open up the discussion about C.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my only question about it is I see that there are 2 lists, which at least from their headings, both of them are for the instructional technician before and after school program. They're fairly lengthy lists, 6 and 8 respectively. They do have different dates, I think, for their exam process, and also one of them is open and promotional, the other one is open. But I would just like to understand why exactly we have 2 lists for the same what appears to be the same position.
Commissioner Roeder, I think Erin Arinez can answer that for us.
And she has her hand up. Go ahead, Erin.
Yeah, so we produced the first list last month. We didn't make the cut to include it in the last month's agenda, so it was produced early on in the month. We sent it over to Christy and the after school team, and they actually called everybody, set up interviews, hired almost everyone on that list, with the exception of a few people who were no longer available. So then we ran a new recruitment closer to the end of this month. And so we produced a new list. And so that's why you're seeing 2 lists, because we actually were able to finalize 2 recruitments in 1 month, and we sent them off, and interviews are taking place on that second list.
Great, that explains the situation, and that being so quick about it and getting the second list after the first list was exhausted right away is fantastic. So I'm totally in favor of these 2. So basically, what we would be doing is retroactively approving the first list from which there already have been hires, and then prospectively approving the second list. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Vice Chair.
May I ask a question actually about list G? And it really is just a question. I probably should have identified it to have been pulled. Periodically, we have school safety officer lists come up. And in the past, we've had some questions about individuals who have been on the list, who might have also been on a separate informally kept list by HR that was basically a do not hire list based on prior conduct. I'm wondering if this list was vetted by HR.
So when we do generate these lists, we before we put the names in the actual physical list, we actually look each person up in our system to make sure to see whether there is a do not rehire note in their record. However, those that have not gone through the district's fingerprinting process, we wouldn't be able to vet those yet because we have not made job offers yet when we're generating eligibility lists.
If I could ask for a clarification, fingerprinting in the DOJ is one thing, looking for hits, and I understand why you do that based on ed code. I'm actually talking about a different process.
So you're referring to?
So when we say a do not hire list, my understanding was when we discussed this position earlier, and now we are really talking, I think, actually prior to both commissioners being on this commission. This was a while ago. There was a concern about someone who was on the list who was an alleged predator. And at the time this went on, the assurance that we got was that HR does a screen for this. So I'm asking did that screen happen here?
Yeah, that's the process that I mentioned also though. So it would be, there's a do not hire list, but
Mhm.
that also covers
As well as the
those
DOJ.
other,
hits.
yes.
Okay,
yes.
got it. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. And this applies actually to all eligibility lists? Or, just this one or?
Yeah, we do follow the same process for
Mhm.
all of our lists. We look up each person in our system
Got
to
it.
see.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of lists 7C and 7D.
And I'll second.
All right, and I agree. So it is done, and that takes us to item 8 on our agenda, and that's conference items. Secretary Castillo.
Yes, so this is our first one, and I'm taking this, let me see, I think Debbie is here to speak to it and Wynn. But this one, there were some questions from Vice Chair Goldstein, and I wanted to make sure that both Wynn or someone on his team was here to speak to it. I believe that the changes there have been no more changes since our last meeting. And this was, again, the job that was approved last year. I'd like to move to allow either Debbie or someone who is on here on Wynn's behalf to speak and maybe possibly answer questions for the vice chair, if that's okay.
It is.
Hello, this is Wynn Skills.
Go ahead, Wynn.
Wait, okay, hi. Hey, so yes, Charlie's right. This position was approved last year, instructional technology technician. In our mind, Debbie Lenz is here. She works very closely with our middle school STEM program and our STEM makerspaces, and I work very closely with the high school shops and makerspaces. And as we built out these programs, we realized a critical need for classified support, and we didn't have a position that fit neatly into what it is that we do with this emerging and developing curriculum. The closest position that we had in the district, actually very related, just a slightly different focus of technology, was the media technology technician, or instructional media technician position, BCEP funded at Berkeley High School, same range as this here. And so we, in our minds, modeled it completely after that. Many of the same conditions of work, expectations, work day. The only difference in our minds when we did this was a wider range of technologies that this person would work with, supporting a maker environment, a shop environment, not strictly only a digital media technology environment, although there is some of that. So I watched the minutes from last week, and I saw that some people on the committee were questioning why we would want to strike out the very explicit language about networking and sort of the computer technology. We never intended that to be in this description. That was never a requirement of the job. Certainly, our instructional technology technicians are usually very adept with different software, Mac and PC. They use all range of instructional technology that you might use in a classroom, but we in no way ever expected them to be working networking. That's the Berkeley the BUSD technology department has positions related to that, not this position. That was so clearly placed in the qualifications or experience, as well as in the education description, that it's our fear, and actually we know from some potential candidates that it, in actuality, caused some people not to qualify. So we're just trying to fix something that we never wanted in the first place. And it's really just very simple language, just taking out the super direct references to networking. And I mean, I have all the highlights here if you need to see them, but I think you probably have that in front of you.
Commissioners.
I'll start. Sure. Thank you for the explanation and I appreciate it. I have two questions now. One is if there were elements in the current job description that were never intended to be there for purposes of the class and comp study, what is happening with this job description? And, maybe Secretary Castillo or somebody else can explain to me, how we're handling that. The other question that I have, and I think it's the one I brought up last time as well, is, I get jobs change, and that's okay. And now additional information that I have is actually there was some stray stuff in this job description that was never meant to be there. So my question is about the job leveling. In other words, on the job descriptions, there's a negotiated, the schedule belongs to BCCE, Schedule 56, right? But the range is the leveling for what we pay. And my question is, was this leveled incorrectly to start with because it had these stray things in it that shouldn't have been there? And what is the correct leveling now? So those are still open questions in my head, and I'm hoping someone can speak to that.
Well, I could speak to the initial leveling. It was done last year, and you are correct, Vice Chair. These things were included. But I did talk to Wynn about it, and I know that there are some things that were taken out to basically represent, technology that is no longer used. But I also didn't feel like I should lower it because I've taken things out. I felt that it was competitive. There wasn't enough substance in terms of the things that were eliminated in order for me to believe that I would have to re-level the position, because the core essential functions were still similar enough. It's just that some of the tools, physical tools that were taken out, in my opinion, did not merit leveling it down. I also didn't want to level the position down. That was my position, but I did talk to Wynn. Wynn, if you want to speak to this as well, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. Well, we do ask a great deal of the people who currently have these positions to be adept. They come in with some knowledge of different technologies. Nobody has all knowledge of everything you use in a makerspace, but they're constantly tooling up. We're constantly introducing new curricular elements, new software that as we get it approved, new tools and equipment. Middle school may be less complex than high school, but middle school, there's a lot of individual attention to students, a lot of collaboration with teachers very directly. So it's a quite complex job. This is no simple, you're much more than just student support, but you're much more than just tech support. You're much more than just inventory and control and sourcing and maintenance. You're all of those things. And in a makerspace at all three middle schools or in a shop at the high school, you are the only one of you. So even though I pay for this with CTE grant monies, I'm very happy to have fairly paid professionals. We are asking for high quality candidates. And again, we modeled it, the range 56 I was familiar with because it was modeled after the media technology technician. What was the next part of it? The schedule 56. The range, I'm unfamiliar with how that's set. Schedule, I knew, range a little bit unfamiliar.
Thank you. Thank you both. So what I'm hearing, and I'll defer to our secretary, to our executive director, with respect to whether this change, resulted in materially mattered to the leveling at the beginning, last year when this position was established. And if we don't think that leveling is an issue, that's great. I'll take that off. Can we speak to the first question, which is for purposes of the class and comp, what are they looking at and how are we going to handle this?
Well, I can speak to that. So every Friday between now and December 1, I think, Sarah and I are meeting with Rick and folks in his team. So we're having a constant dialogue. I mean, I'll contextualize this for them. You know, I can give the history. In terms of the final, this is obviously not part of phase 3, but we're actually, after today's meeting, assuming it's approved, we'll bring it back to Rick to reevaluate. I'll mention, you know, it's a new position. I will mention the things that were taken out. And I'm sure that Rick may even talk to Wynn about it. Sam has her hand up too. Maybe she wants to speak to it.
I just wanted to say that this, because of when it was created and when we started the class and comp, it was not a position that we actively included in the class and comp because it was brand new when the class and comp study started. And so there wasn't a gap in time. Now there has been a year and we are making some adjustments. So I agree with Charlie with taking it back to EHA to have them look at it. But we did not include it in phase 1, which is when it would have been included because of the fact that it had been a brand new job at that point. And so we didn't feel that it needed to be evaluated as the other jobs did.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate that. So what I'm hearing is that the Schedule 56 is meant to peer this with, I'm sorry, media technician. When I know you're on, you're mute, but you're nodding your head. So that'll help me. Okay. So it's a peer to media technician. Okay. Okay. I'm satisfied that, you know, we're giving it a look. You know, is this a singleton position or do we have a few of these? We have 3 of these.
No, it's not a singleton, and I don't think it was ever meant to be. I think whatever budget and necessity allows, you know.
Okay, but
Yeah.
it's important that we make sure that it's leveled right, because as you all know, you know, throwing a wrench in the works, you know, when we've got proportional leveling, which is what we have here at BUSD, can be a real mess. So we don't want that.
Rest assured, Vice Chair, the EHA is reviewing all of my work I've done for the last 2 years. So don't worry, it's going to be looked at, I promise. Mildred, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to state because we were, I just recently just sent a list to Sarah regarding job classifications that had concerns and questions from phase 1. So I was thinking that it'll make sense because those job classifications that is going to go back to Rick, that it just makes sense for this one to go along with that same group that will be looked at again. Because I just sent her the list that we had a meeting about that we talked about. So that one, this job description could be included in that.
Okay, understood. It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Commissioner Roeder.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Skeels. Thank you, Ms. Lenz, for being at the meeting and explaining what the situation is. What I'm hearing, and this is with respect to both the salary range and also the job description and the minimum qualifications, education, et cetera, is that the impression I get is that back in September and especially in August of last year, when this position was approved by the Board of Education and then by us, everyone understood what the job was going to be. And the job was going to be as it's currently expressed. And that in point of fact, there were just some items that were included in the duties and then also in the minimum qualifications that didn't represent everyone's understanding of what the job was supposed to be in the first place. And all we're doing is rectifying that slight mishap that occurred, and that includes the salary range as well, it seems. I mean, I don't know if my understanding is correct or not, but that's the impression that I'm getting from hearing everybody speak about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Roder, and you got a thumbs up from Wen. All right, so any other questions, comments, concerns? So then do I have a motion to?
I'll let you. You'll let me? All right. Then I will move that the revised instructional technology technician job description as presented today be approved.
Okay, I'll second.
And I agree. All right, great. So now on to item 8B on our conference items.
Okay. So the Board of Education met, they expanded upon, and I included as an attachment, they expanded upon the Latinx resolution. They wanted to make sure that the concerns from the PC were addressed, and I believe the attachment is very specific about the school assignments and what the intent behind the bilingual request for OFI specialist is.
Commissioners?
I don't have anything.
No, I would just say that it appears to me anyway that as Ms. Aranez pointed out at our last meeting, that our rules did require, when we have a bilingual position, that it be specifically designated by the Board of Education, and it was not completely clear, although there was the Latinx resolution, which in general terms might be construed as having approved that. Nonetheless, it wasn't a clear and specific designation, so we asked that it be brought back to the Board of Education, which it was. And at, I believe it was their September 20th meeting, they did approve both a revision to the Latinx resolution and also, very importantly, in attachment B, the approval of the bilingual designation for family engagement and equity specialists. And it specifically references Longfellow Middle School as being designated as requiring that position. Now, how that position is going to be filled ultimately by a bilingual specialist, that of course is going to be up to the school and up to human resources, et cetera, and the OFI staff. So I think this complies with our rules as far as I can tell.
Right.
I agree, and I'll move that we go ahead and approve the bilingual position at Longfellow.
I second that.
And I agree. All right, excellent. Moving right along. We're item 9 on the agenda, discussion items, starting with 9A.
Well, I'll introduce the subject. I think my friends in BCCE, Mildred specifically, we had a lot of discussion on this matter, and we both agreed not to mention any one individual, but I think the greater point to be discussed tonight is regarding the exam process, first exam versus second exam, a high score on the first exam automatically passing the second exam. Conceptually, I think that's what it is. I'm going to obviously defer to Mildred to discuss in her own words what she would like to say, but I do want to point to your attention some of the rules that I found in regards to my responsibility, specifically the commission's responsibility and exam processes as they stand and how they're interpreted. which basically fall under my purview, with your ability to appeal my decision, of course, but it is one of my main component duties. And again, I should mention, not to sway the discussion in any way, but on October 9th, we are meeting and having a retreat regarding exams. So this discussion is very pertinent to our own retreat and brainstorming on ways that we can improve. And that's how I wanted to phrase the discussion, is that we always want to listen to how we can do things better.
Mhm. Thank you, Secretary Castillo. Mildred, would you like to comment?
Yes, thank you. It's my agenda item. No. So of course, yes, this is a great discussion that I think that definitely needs to be had, because it also goes along with other things that have been coming up this evening, just talking about the exam, the testing process and everything in a whole. So I had a meeting with, I'm not gonna say the member's name. I am gonna refer to the member as John Doe, because I don't want to put their business out there, but I just want to get you to understand, because what I'm asking for, and I'll tell you why, is that this member have the opportunity to be placed on the as a promotional person on the HR Tech eligibility list. And when we're having the meeting, I had a meeting with Charlie and myself, and we were kind of like going through the process and trying to understand how John could not pass the oral exam. So just to give you a little bit of what is so concerning is in the last couple of years, and I would just start from like October 2020 to present, John took a test. So on the written test, he scored a 70. On the oral, he scored a 73. On the written, he scored a 78. On the oral, he scored a 73, and it was ranked number 1 on the promotion. And then on October 2021, John scored a 92 on the written, and then scored a 70 on the oral, and then ranked number 1 on the promotional. And then in May 2022, John scored 78 on the written, 73 on the oral, ranked number 1 on promotional. John then took another test, April 2023, scored 100 on the written, 69 on the oral, ranked number 1 on the promotional. John then took a test, July 2023, scored 91 on the written, but failed the oral. September 23, John scored 90 on the written, 60 on the oral, and ranked number 1 on promotional. So we've been talking this evening a lot about hiring within, promotionals, our processes, and I'm not understanding that with this process, how, and just looking at all the scores from October 2020 to present, that they're passing all the written. I named 1, 2, 3, 4 exams in written that they scored 90% and above, all actually even all the way up to 100. And then the orals was coming in between 73, 70, 73, 69. And then all of a sudden on this one particular test, they didn't pass the oral, which allowed them not to even be able to go forward. It just kicked them out. So they passed the written, didn't pass the oral, and he is out of having an opportunity to be again number 1 on the promotional. And the confusion is when you're just looking at all the scores, it just doesn't make sense. So in talking to Charlie about this and breaking it all down, and I was asking about the oral process to try to understand how this member could have possibly not passed. And he stated that John answered all the questions correctly. So if the answers were answered correctly in the oral, I'm not understanding how John didn't pass the oral, so it kicked him completely off. So I'm asking to either, I'm asking commission. I heard what Secretary Castillo said in the beginning that it's his preview to say what should happen. And I respect that, but I also would like to really look at what happened and look at just the pattern. If somebody can score a 90% in the written, how do they possibly just pass the oral? But I think also the question too is not understanding the exam process, because it appears that we don't say what the pass score is, or we don't know anything until after the exam is done and everyone has taken the test, when we're supposed to know what the passing score is from the beginning before the test is given. It's just a lot of questions. So I'm asking that this member be placed on the eligibility list for the HR tech position, even if they're placed at the end, because it's not as if we're saying, oh, put them above this who may have higher score. I don't know what the other scores are, but it completely makes no sense to me on how they were not able to make that exam. So I would like to just open it up for discussion and see, where what can happen.
Commissioners?
Maybe I'll ask for some clarification. So, Mildred, you identified half a dozen tests that this person took. Were they all the same tests, or were they different tests?
No, ma'am. They were different tests, which makes it even more interesting. I can give you the names of those tests if you would like.
No, it's okay. I just, there were so many of them. I just thought,
yes, ma'am.
Why would somebody be testing? I also want to make sure that factually we all understand that there is not a set point for exams, that it is at the discretion of the director to use a floating set point that is often based on the curve. So I heard you say comments to the effect that there is a set point, we should know what the pass rate is. And that's not my understanding of how we do exams. So, can we all agree, stipulate that, we understand it's a floating pass rate that is set by the director? Do we all understand it that way?
That's what I believed it to be.
The answer is yes, but there are two things that are not the same, I think, that are involved in this kind of situation. One is, what is the passing score in each exam? And then the second is, what is the weight that's given to each of the exams? Now, the weighting is sort of a different issue, and exactly when the weighting needs to be established is something that's worthy of discussion. And I mean, when you're finished, Madam Vice Chairperson, I also have I need some additional clarification too.
All right, let's work on clarifications first, and then we can address whatever that. So I'm ready to pass it over to you.
Okay. So for starters, I would like to go back sort of to the beginning of the process. So just and maybe it'll be Mr. Castillo who can answer these questions. So the first question is, as my understanding, the first step in the process is looking at the application and determining if the applicant meets the minimum qualifications. That's step one in the process. And I guess this is just a question. Do those minimum qualifications get graded in any way? Or is it just basically pass fail? You meet the minimum qualifications or you don't meet the minimum qualifications?
So generally, Commissioner Roeder, the minimum qualifications are not graded. However, we do have the training and experience exam, which we're looking at their background and their, so the answer to that is, in terms of across the board, looking at MQs and grading them, no, that's not a practice. But we do have exam processes in which there's training and experience that you do, it's part of the test. I don't know if you need more than that. I think Aaron can speak to particulars, but You are correct. The first step is to make sure that everyone meets the minimum qualifications for the position.
Okay, and if Aaron has additional information, that would be great. Does the training and experience get sort of a percentage or numerical grade?
No, it's just pass fail.
Pass fail, okay. All right, and then the next step is the written. Is that
So that always changes.
okay? Go ahead.
Sorry.
Depending on the position, I suppose. Some positions don't require written exams, I suppose. Some might actually require performance exams.
That's
But
right.
in those cases where a written exam is required, is then the written exam that gets a grade, some kind of a numerical grade?
Yes, it does.
And that's a percentage?
Yes.
And who does that grading?
So typically with the multiple choice, it's just automatically graded. And if it's a different type of exam, where there are prompts or written prompts, then we get a rater, a subject matter expert rater to
Okay.
designate a score.
Okay, so that gets a percentage as well. And so is it a correct statement that, let's just say that the next step is an oral panel, that before you can go to the oral panel, you have to get a passing grade on the written portion? How is
That's-
that? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Is that incorrect?
No, that's correct. I didn't mean to speak over you. I'm on Wi-Fi. I apologize.
Okay. And this is sort of related to the establishment of the passing score. Is that when, as the vice chairperson mentioned, at that written portion, is that then the determination of what's a passing grade on that? Is that kind of on a curve, in the sense that, if you have, and I'm going to exaggerate a lot here, but if you have 100 applicants and 95 of them score 70, let's say, on the written, it's my guess is physically impossible to have 95 oral examinations. So therefore, the written portion is not going to be considered 70. It's going to be considered somewhat higher, so that you can have a manageable number of oral exams. Have I got that more or less right?
Aaron, do you want me to? I'm not there physically, so I can't see the physical cues. Yes. So to break it down just a little simply, first I should say that it's not always, formulaic like that. There may be an instance where it's like a written, and and I think that, Commissioner Roeder, that the variations can change. But for this particular exam, it was a written and then an oral. And the oral, in order to get to the oral, you have to pass the written. So yes, the scoring is, as Vice Chairperson had stated conceptually, on a curve. Because to your example, if you have 100 folks that pass and 90 of them have a score of 70, or then you do have to make a cut score that is manageable for everyone to interview. But you have to pass both exams, and you can get a median score at the end. But if you fail one part of the exam, then and it's below passing, then you don't move forward. Okay. So you have to pass both parts of the exam in order to have an average score. So, but if you fail either one, then you don't move to the final list. And that's not just oral, that's any exam. It's gonna work out that way.
Right. So you've gotten a little bit ahead of me.
Sorry.
Sorry. If you haven't noticed, I'm a very, very deliberate one foot in front of the other.
I know. We've
Hey.
been working together too long. I apologize. I knew where you were going. I
I'm the one
apologize.
who should apologize, but that's the way my brain operates. Okay, so you have to pass the written in order to get to the oral. So now you're at the oral portion. As I understand it, first of all, that there's a panel of subject matter experts, for want of a better term, who participate in that oral process. They talk to I guess maybe the site head and whoever the person is who would have the best information about the kinds of questions that should be asked on the oral exam. And ultimately, a number of questions are developed to be asked at the oral exam. So first off, am I correct that everybody gets asked the same questions?
That is correct. And, you know, our exam team doesn't let the panelists ask a free question. You know, all of the questions that are asked are scripted. The question has to be read as it's scripted. And the only questions aside from that that are allowed are clarifying questions to the person's answer.
Okay. And then the grading of that, well, I won't assume anything. Is the grade on the oral exam also designated as a percentage or a number of some kind?
In this particular case, and it's pretty common, we had 3 raters, 3 subject matter experts. They then rate and they discuss, you know, they have a discussion amongst themselves, pros and cons, what they liked, what they didn't like. But they then rate, they send their rating to the exam unit. So they rate the exam, what they believed were the strong areas. And again, each area, each question has a rating, let's just say 1 to 5. And they write down their, you know, 3, 4, you know, and they add it up, and then our exam unit will total that rating from the rate sheets of the interviewers.
And again, is that designated as a percentage or a number, or how does that work?
So I'm not always asked to set a pass point. And I don't believe I was for this exam either, but it is done the same concept of making sure that, you know, you have one score, you have the other score, but they're scored. It's only when you have that enormous amount of folks that I'm asked to set a pass point. But more often than not, the scores are what they are. And, you know, if Aaron determines that it's a manageable list and there are enough people to move forward that have passed, I may not be asked to do a pass point at all. But each individual exam is graded according to whatever the rate sheet may be for that particular exam. I think that's the best way to answer that without giving real specifics as to process. Aaron, girl, please. I'm struggling around this because I don't want to give away too much because it is our exams, but go ahead.
And so typically, to make it easy for our raters, though, we do give them rating sheets with 1 to 5 scoring matrix. And so we use a formula to convert that 1 to 5 into a percentage point that we then use to tabulate the scores. So yes, we do ultimately come up with a percentage point based on the 1 to 5 rating.
And then how is it determined what, for the oral exam, what is the passing percentage point? How's that figured out?
Yeah, so that usually typically goes to Charlie for to designate the passing point, or to the director.
Okay. And then finally, when it comes to having somebody on the list, let's just say we're talking only about the written exam and the oral exam. Are there different weights that are given to the written versus the oral to determine where you are on the eligibility list? Or how does that happen?
They are always rated 50-50
50-50.
if they
Okay,
have passed both exams.
okay. But if you have a high score on one and a lower but yet passing score on the other, those scores are, I guess, averaged, and they're averaged at a weight of 50-50.
That's correct.
Okay. I think my clarifying questions have been answered.
I'm hearing this and I'm just wondering, in this particular process for this particular position, would I be wrong to be looking at this in some ways as very close to a traditional application process, right? So the person meets the general qualifications. They take the written exam, right? And that written exam says this person is worthy, not worthy, but is eligible for an interview, right? And so now that person goes in and they do what is basically an interview for the job. And so in some ways, this is as if, and I've done hiring before, I get a resume for a position and I look at this resume and it's like, wow, this person on paper has a lot of experience. I mean, it looks like they may be actually a very good fit for this role. I'm going to bring them in for an interview. And then we do the interview and it's like, ooh, they're just not right for this position. Only in this case, you're kind of grading it. But is that, am I on the right track with that, Erin? Go ahead.
So it's a little different because when let's say they pass that first written exam, they're then invited to take an oral exam, and we try to not call it an interview, but an oral examination, because they're not being interviewed by a hiring manager at this point. They're being hired by, an oral panel. They're part of an oral panel. There's a oral panel board, subject matter experts, and these subject matter experts are not given applications. They're not given resumes. They're not given any information as to what this applicant scored in the first exam. They're just given a list of questions and there's a debrief. And so then they're trying to basically, keep that process as uniform as possible for every candidate. And then they're asked to score at the end. So they don't get any personal information at this point.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, Vice Chair.
I want to make sure, I think you misspoke. You said they're being hired by the panel, and I think you meant to say they're being examined.
Yes, you're right. Sorry. They're
Right.
being,
Okay,
they're
just checking.
Sorry.
I think the other thing that is true, I just want to make sure this is still the case, that in the way that all the candidates take the exact same written exam, for the oral panel, my understanding is that the exact same examiners examine all the candidates. So, you're laying a baseline of consistency, with respect to the examiners. It's not that, some people are examined by one set of people and some by another.
All right. I saw that Mildred, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So a couple of things. First, before I say, well, to what Ms. Goldstein just said is that the members are, or whomever that's taking the oral test, that they're interviewed by the same people. That hasn't been happening with all the tests. So there's no consistency there. And if we're going to really talk about the process and do what's best for the process, we really have to be, really honest to talk about for a fact, not just, I'm not saying with this particular job that I'm talking about, but with others, there weren't the same examiners. Because I can honestly say for Local 21, for the after school coordinators, the oral panel wasn't the same people. So that's one of the issues of why I'm questioning the way the exams and everything are being done, because the inconsistency is causing a problem. I remember when it was 50% written, 50% oral, and then you get a combined score. So even if I'm looking at the numbers that I was just giving you, this John received 90% written on 90% for the written, and then 60% oral. So that became an overall score of 75. How can this person receive a 91% written, but completely fail the oral, and they don't even get a chance to be on the eligibility list? That absolutely makes no sense to me. So if we're saying that it's just based off of what who's making that decision? And then everyone always knew in the beginning, and I don't know if you recall, commissioners, we were talking about, well, I think last year, that the passing score at that time used to be 70. And then we started talking about this curving scoring that's being done, and it's based off of, well, how many people is taking the test. It's based off of, how many people received whatever score. There's no consistency in the exam process. And that's why it's just so questionable. And that's why I wanted to give you the numbers and just share with you the numbers, because it doesn't make sense. Even what Aaron just said, if you're scoring between 1 and 5, how do you fail the oral exam to where you don't get on the list at all, but yet you received a 91%? We all do math here. So what are you telling me, that they received 1 all the way across and that's an automatic fail? It just doesn't make sense, sir. So I'm trying to understand how we can, again, have a written score of 91, but you don't pass the oral and you don't make the eligibility list. But if I'm looking at these other numbers, and I can say them out loud, and what the overall score was, this particular test doesn't make sense to where they were not able to make the eligibility list. And just to say that at the end of, if we're going through the process, we're saying we take the written, then there's the oral, and then it goes to Secretary Castillo, to where then he decides what the passing score is going to be. I don't know.
Let me just clarify thank you, Mildred. Let me just clarify a couple things. One, that's not always the way it works. And in regards to inconsistency for panels, you are correct. If it is an HR position, we're going to get an HR panel. Those are different people. If it is a facilities position, we're going to get a different panel because it's a facilities position. So the subject matter expert panels do change. They're supposed to, because only a person who actually knows that role is going to be able to grade them effectively. Second, the exam process, again, I should mention, we do take this feedback seriously, and we are going to look at things, but there's some things that can't change. One is to disclose a predetermined formula for how things are graded is one thing. That it kind of defeats the purpose of a neutral exam. Second, in this particular case, the person, Joe, I think we're calling them, Joe, appealed. And I conversed at great length with Joe as part of the appeal. And Mildred joined us halfway through, so she heard most of this. I reviewed the interview and I understood the low score. I understood it. And I won't go into details, but part of the appeal process is that. And some of you, again, I will note, there have been appeals where I have found in favor of the applicant. So the process overwhelmingly works. It is proven to work. If there's a demonstrated flaw in the exam, or something that a rater might have said incorrectly, or we've approved someone before on a list, and now there's a lot of scenarios in which the appeal is taken very seriously. And part of that appeal is me inviting the applicant to talk to me and to share what I observed. So that was also exercised in this particular case. So I understand, and I understand the position, but it is not a position that can be supported with, you know, evidence and what we're doing, because we can't have a blanket policy in which you do well on a 50 grade and do poorly on a 50 grade, and this just doesn't add up. You have to pass both parts of the 50% in order to move forward. And again, this is just one exam. There's a lot of different other exams in which there is no oral or anything else, and they're graded differently. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify those things. Chairman, we have Frank and Raina, whose hands are up.
Before we, and I saw that, but I'm gonna, Vice Chair, you wanted to make a comment?
Just only one. And I think I heard this right, but I want to double check. And it sort of riffs off your comment. It's a progressive examination process, as I understand it, right? To get to the next step, you have to pass the earlier step. So in an instance where there are very few positions where I think actually we have a written, an oral, and actually a performance element. So, you know, same sort of thing would apply. You know, if you pass the written, didn't pass the oral, you wouldn't get to the performance element. Okay. And I am supposing that the reason we have this and that we equally weight, if there were 3 exams, each would be worth a third, right? Is because our underlying belief and assumption is you have to be skilled enough, you know, in all 3 areas to do the work. Okay. Thank you.
Frank.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question, I guess. I'm listening to this conversation, and this is what I'm hearing. So correct me if I'm not hearing it correctly. If Charlie says he doesn't always do the curve, it doesn't always come to him, and Aaron said that if they don't pass it, then it doesn't go to Charlie. It only goes to Charlie if they pass. And Charlie said only sometimes it comes to him for the curve. And he said in this instance, this one did not come to him. So my question to Aaron, I guess, would be, and I think we've been asking this for a long time, not just for tonight. What is the passing score then on these oral exams? Because Aaron, you actually said that that if they don't pass, but I never heard a score. Not one time have I heard. What do you have a set score on these oral exams? Because how could Charlie do a curve if it never gets to him? So then what would be the set score?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I just want to clarify that there is always a passing point, and it's always communicated to the candidate. So once they take the exam, they receive a notice with that passing point. But the passing point will vary, and it depends again on the recruitment. And like Izzy mentioned, sometimes you have, 100 people that take an exam. We've actually been having a lot of people take exams lately, and we're thinking about that next exam and how to move forward. And we can't possibly administer an oral exam to 100 or even 50 people because we do use the same panelists. And I do want to correct that fact that, we do always use the same raters. I know Mildred mentioned a recruitment where she believes we did not, because we had so many people taking an oral exam. We asked our PC staff to pre-record the exams and then show them though to the same raters. So the same raters are always rating the candidates. So we do always do that, and it would make it very difficult to move forward to that next step if we have to administer 40 or 50 oral exams. So those passing points will change, but they are always given to the candidate when they receive their notice.
Can I ask a question again in a different way, maybe? I apologize. I'm still not hearing the answer.
Go ahead, Frank.
So if you're giving them you're saying you're giving them a set score before they take the test? If that's true, then this is all mute and they know what the score is. But it sounds like the score is set after they take the test? And if that's true, who sets that score if Charlie's not involved?
They receive the scores after they take the test, and Charlie is involved. I'm
I am
not sure
involved.
where you got the scoring, the curving thing. That is what he uses sometimes to set a pass point. He might set that pass point based on a curve.
I assume I heard it wrong, and I heard he said that he did not set the score for this test. Thank you.
Reina, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
You are. Thank you for verifying that. I tried to show up into the meeting in person, but the doors were locked and there was no way to get into the meeting. So I just wanted to point that out. My other question is there, and I don't know if that has been addressed because I missed some of the meeting, but how many number of panelists are involved in the oral exam? Is there a minimum? Also, the second question would be, the second question is, yeah, we can start with this.
Aaron, do you want me to? So ideally, we have an odd number of panelists, but it does differ. It's never one person or two people, and it's certainly never the person within the department. But we try to do odd numbers because you always have a tiebreaker. But it varies. It could be 3, it could be 5. If it's a very high level position, it might even be, as many as 7, but rarely is it that many. But it differs from exam to exam.
And I remembered my other question was the appeal for the oral exams. How is that processed? Because that's not mentioned in any of the emails. There is the disclaimer for the written test, but there isn't one for an oral. So that, to my understanding, I couldn't appeal. And I've kind of in a similar boat as the Joe example, what I've heard. Yeah.
So you should have received an email, and in that email, the passing score and your score are detailed, and then there is a paragraph that is citing section 70 in the merit rules that tells you, as the person who just took the test, that if you want to appeal your score, you have to do that within 5 days, and you send an email to the team, and then that first appeal would go to me. So you should have received that email. If you give me your last name, I'll make sure I could check after the meeting, and I'll check. Aaron is here. Sarah's here too. We can always check, but that's the process. You should have received an email from us detailing everything I just mentioned.
Thank you, Charlie. And I just want to just follow up on something that you said, Reina. We're actually in the boardroom, and that's like the room that's right off the courtyard, right next to the swimming pool. So yeah, the door isn't locked. In fact, we just had someone enter in later on in this meeting. So I'm not sure what happened there. So sorry about that. And so we are going to, Mildred, I'm going to have you make what will be the final comment here, unless we have other comments from the commission, and then we're going to move on.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to say in closing that for all of us, and even talking about this discussion, it's okay to make mistakes, because the only way that we can do things better and make things better is if we look at, maybe something that we had done that just didn't work. I understand what I said. I was very clear in what I said as far as the panels not being the same. I'm talking about for a particular test. For example, I could just say there could be a test for admin 1, and it doesn't mean there have been situations where the panel was not the same. I know that there are different panelists for different positions. I've been in this district for 30 years. That's not what I was talking about. But what I'm saying is, in order for us to do better, we can admit that sometimes we're wrong and we just need to fix it. Just wanted to make sure that I brought to you guys' attention to give this member an opportunity to again be a promotional. And just to really look at the scoring and how it was done, and just to see if there was a glitch, if there was something done that wasn't done correctly, to where we should really look at it and John should be placed on the eligibility list. The scoring still doesn't make sense. And I just think that it's worth looking at it, because all evening from the beginning till now, what we have been talking about is promoting within. And what are we doing to where we're hindering our members to be able to go to the next step? So I would like to close with that. Thank you.
And thank you for that, Mildred. And yeah, I mean, I think that, these are good discussions to have. Again, I think that, there's always room for improvement in any process. I think in this particular process, we did what we could do. We, investigated the situation and, came to the decision that we came to. But again, I think that we can never not have discussions like this where we're trying to make sure that, again, we do want to encourage promotion. We do want to make sure that people have that opportunity. And if we can find ways of making that process just a little bit better, that's always a good discussion to have. So thank you. Sarah.
Sorry, I just wanted to let Raina know that another participant here at the meeting notified us that it's actually the exterior gate that was closed. So that's why she was not able to get in. So
Okay.
we'll make sure that doesn't happen again, and I apologize.
Thank you for checking that. All right. And again, thank you all for this discussion. We're going to move on now to discussion item 9B on the agenda.
Hi, everybody. Oh, wait.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, Matt can go first. I was just going to introduce the agenda item. Okay. I should start by saying Mr. Wilcox and I have spoken several times, but as I say to everyone, because again, I serve the classified employees, if you still want to go to the commission, you should. I did express everything that's in this document and agenda item 9B. I think what we're looking at is two things. I think that Commissioner Roeder and I have discussed proposing language that is much more explicit regarding initial placement. There's no parameter in the beginning or end, and I think that would help clarify matters. Second, I have a few colleagues that remind me that BUSD is unique. At least half the districts do what we do and the other half don't. And the this that I'm referring to is the advanced step placement. The designation of that in some districts is designated to the board and not the commission. I say that because we have been entrusted with what is a fiscal responsibility. And I think that as much as I can be empathetic and sympathetic to people's situations where they forgot or missed or didn't read the language right or whatever that may be, we set an extremely dangerous precedent, and maybe, and again, I say this in the most respectful terms, but possibly abuse our own authority by going back and going back a year on language that's initial placement. And these are all things I said to Mr. Wilcox. So I think that my agenda item is pretty specific, and that's the short introduction to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Mr. Wilcox.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Matt. If you forget, I got Coach Matt written on my shirt here. I was getting a little lonely out there in the audience, so thanks for having me. But yeah, so I just wanted to read the email that I got on September 21st. Just the first line said, "Hi, Matthew. Since we are a merit school district, all BUSD employees start off on step 1 unless a step advance is approved through our personnel commission." And I think that is a lovely sentence, and it just doesn't explicitly state what the rules are. And so, yeah, I had a nice conversation with Charlie, and I appreciate him reaching out. He was very empathetic indeed. And yeah, so I just wanted to like go through the points from my perspective. So I would say number one, there's like the 4 R's of consequences I talk about with kids at school, which would be that you want to have a consequence that's respectful, related, reasonable, and revealed in advance. So in terms of this one, is it respectful? Absolutely. Charlie and the folks who are emailing with me, very respectful. Is it related? Yes. The perspective is can't have a step advance because you didn't follow the rules. 3, reasonable. I think yes, if it's communicated, but it's kind of subjective. That's why we're talking here. And the 4th one, is it revealed in advance? That's where I disagree. No. So the consequences of not submitting a step advance request within a certain time frame were not communicated. So the rules have to be made clear if they're going to be enforced. That's my perspective. And so I think that there's also a bit of ambiguity because here in the executive director's recommendation, there's a line that the past practice has been consistent with no more than 30 days after the first hire date. But I also have an email here that says, let's see here, from Charlie, which is saying, hey, good morning. This message is to confirm we had a conversation about your request for an advance request. Unfortunately, I will not be able to recommend a step advance request to the fact that initial placement is to be done in the first 60 days and you've been at work for a year. So I guess I don't know if it's 30 days or 60 days. I feel like policies are written. I don't know if it is written or where it is written. And so I think that's something for folks to work on. There's a point here about, it was section B after the rules, standards, and authority of the commission about no rule or amendment ... shall be adopted by the commission. I respect that. Yeah, I don't know how these things work, but I don't think that if it wasn't communicated that a new precedent is being set. It's if there's a mistake that's been made, then we can rectify that. That's my perspective. And yeah, as far as, you know, like serious financial consequences, would it be setting a precedent? Like maybe that's true. But if it's, you know, if there's a valid reason to decline that request, yes. Right. But I feel like my appeal should be judged by whether or not I was communicated those things. So the basic questions I have for the Personnel Commission are, did I have all the information that I needed? And if not, can I be held accountable for those rules? So that's what I got.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Commissioners?
Sure. Thank you for coming, Mr. Wilcox.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. So the rule, and it's in the agenda, the rule that we deal with for advanced placements is this 70.100.1. And at least for, I guess, the 3.5 or so years that I've been on the commission, it has been, in my understanding in the past as well, reserved for new employees. So it says all new employees shall be appointed at the hiring rate for the class as approved by the commission. The hiring rate shall be the first step of the schedule, except for classes where recruitment efforts have indicated difficulty in recruiting at that step. And then an accelerated hiring rate may be set with the approval of the board and commission. Okay, so I think the intent is actually pretty darn clear, which is it is for new hires. I agree with you that what constitutes a new hire, and whether it's 30 or 60 days or some other period of time, should be in our rules, and we're in the process of revising them, should be clarified. But nonetheless, it's for new hires. Now, when you came in public comment at the last meeting, what was going through my mind, and I don't recall if I expressed it or not, was if the exception to that, in my opinion, would be if there are extenuating circumstances that prevented you as a new hire from filing your application for advanced placement, advanced step within a reasonable window, 30 days, 60 days, whatever would constitute new. Because I don't think that over a year would constitute new. I read your email that you sent to all of us, and I appreciate your candor about it. But I didn't I didn't read, and I'm asking you now if there is such a thing, about any real extenuating circumstances. I mean, if somebody gets hired, gets hit by a car, is in a coma for a year, wakes up and realizes, oh my goodness, I'm only at step 1, I need to be in step 5, that would constitute an extenuating circumstance, being in a coma for a year. But it really does take an exceptional circumstance to deviate from this new hire concept. So I guess my question to you is there any extraordinary, exceptional circumstance other than, well, you weren't clear on what the rule actually was?
No. And I guess my opinion on that is that I mean, it feels subjective in terms of what is the length of time. I guess I hear you saying the spirit of law, and my question is the commission making decisions based on the spirit or like the definition of the rules? And I know I'm reiterating myself here, but if it wasn't made clear and then we're making subjective decisions, that, it's, I don't know. I'm not sure how to phrase that. So was I in a coma for a year? I do not believe so. I can't speak to that. I would say no.
Thank you.
I think I'd like to try to understand a little more about when you were hired on, what were you told? And part of the reason I'm interested in this is there's an HR part to your hire, and then there's a commission part. We do the candidate selection, we do the candidate vetting. The district, through the HR function, does the actual hiring. So we get folks here who, seem to have learned this. And I've never really asked them, well, how did you learn it? Did HR tell you, or did you find out later, et cetera, et cetera? So I'd actually like to hear your story about how did you come, what were you told at the time of hire? And then how did you come to find out about this?
Yeah. And, human memory is fallible. So I don't want to just say things that would benefit me now, right? From what I recall, I was told that I could apply for a step advance. And that was that, right? It wasn't, hey, you have to do it within this time frame or else you're no longer eligible. And I went through the hiring process and communicating with HR. They sent me the email, which there's a little bit more to that, but not more explicit about how to do it. Which is, you can apply for a step advance. Here's the person you contact and go from there. And then, following emails, there wasn't, hey, you need to apply by 30 days, 60 days, whenever. So I very much have been on the impression that I can apply at any time.
And what made you decide to apply now?
This past year, I wasn't sure if I was returning to school. And then my principal asked me to come back, and I was like, okay, I'm definitely doing this thing. So I made a point to do it. And that was when I found out that there was a moratorium on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you hold other positions at the district? Because I see, in our document here, you're identified as a school campus aide.
Yeah, school campus aide.
Is that the only position you have?
That's it.
The district? Okay.
I will add, this is tangential. I applied for a different position at the school to work in an after-school program. And then once they had offered me the position, that's when I found out that I couldn't have those two positions simultaneously. So I feel like there's, from my perspective, a theme of not finding out things until a bit down the road.
All right. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
I don't think, no more questions.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't have any more questions. I think what I will say is I'm sorry that this wasn't clear to you.
Yeah.
And that it played out this way. And one learning I think we take from this is a referral that we make back to HR to make sure that in whatever documents they are giving to new hires, it's explicit, to your point, that it's got to be within 30 days. It's so interesting to me because we have some people who actually don't accept the offer until they come here first. So there must be variability in how this is communicated, and it needs to be better. I think the other comment I'll make is that school campus aide is one of the job descriptions that was in phase 1, right? Of our class and comp study. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Right. So one of the things, we don't quite know yet, how it'll come to be, but that job family is being reviewed. And it may be recommended for changes. It may not, so, in the Keep Hope Alive net effect, there may be something there, there may be, but we don't know yet. The other comment I'll make is apropos to some of the comments that Secretary made and that Commissioner Roeder made. One of the reasons this thing is designed the way it is designed is districts have to, be able to reliably budget for positions. So, they need to know, what's going on and what's changing. So when things come to us, that are working out of class, that are, changing of class, that are advanced step approaches, there is some measure of latitude, certainly within the commission, to make changes, when it is needed and when it's necessary. And maybe I'm, stating the obvious, just saying the reason we have, a period of time at the beginning is so that we don't get surprise after surprise after surprise, because if folks could do it at the 1-year mark, you would, and so would the 26 other people who are school campus aides when they hear that you did it and, you got it. And that's one of the reasons we try to, keep it specific to a new hire period. So, I'll just say, I'm sorry this happened to you, because we need school campus aides. That's a really important role. And you just, you look like the right kind of person to be the right kind of role model, for our students when they're doing that. And I hope maybe we've been able to explain a little bit about why we can't act on it now, and probably not do much except apologize.
Sure. I appreciate that. And without trying to be disrespectful, I want to go back to my question of do the folks on the board feel like I had the information that I needed? Is it possible to get a yes or a no on that? Is a binary answer possible?
Well, I would say that, having not been in, the discussion that you had with the human resource person, I don't know. So I can't give a definitive answer one way or the other. What I will say though, is I do, and this may be of little, comfort, but I do appreciate you bringing this to us, because as Vice Chair said, we want to make sure that people are getting the information that they need so they don't wind up in this position. Right. And, even to your, I think you said you had a conversation with your principal, that even the principal would, if you said, well, I want to come back, but I'm going to need to do this, that principal would have been able to say, well, situation that you've been with us for a year, and to put that in, this is where you need to be and all that. But that there would have been more communication to help you in this process from when you got the position, and even when you're considering whether or not you were going to come back to the position. But it does help us to now know that we need to make sure that those things are communicated so that people don't wind up in a difficult situation. So I thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hopefully that can help the next person down the road. And to just push a little bit more, it sounds like you can't answer that question. I respect, because you don't have all information. It makes sense. If hypothetically I didn't have all information, my question is, can I be held accountable if I didn't have the information?
That's a great question. Again, I'm going to I'm going to refrain from answering that question, because again, this is a real situation and there were real conversations had that I wasn't a part of. So I can't speak for the other commissioners, but I personally cannot speak and give a definitive answer to that one way or the other.
I think we wouldn't want to treat it as a hypothetical.
Okay.
Each thing needs to be treated, based on the fact pattern of what happened. And I think the right thing to do, and I think Secretary, you caught this, is can we understand exactly what it is that HR is communicating to new hires, you know, so we can understand, you know, does it have in it what it needs to have in it? You know, it's a tough one.
Okay, gotcha. So it sounds like it's a polite no for now. And then as a person who hasn't navigated this area a lot before, my question is, if I wanted to continue with this process, it sounds like it wouldn't be here, but it would be talking with like a representative of the union. Is that how this goes? And that might not be a question that you answer.
I think probably you should talk to your union rep.
Okay.
About it and, you know, see what their appetite is to pursue it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Have
Mr.
a good night.
Wilcox. Mildred, I see your hand up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I wanted to thank Matt for coming out and speaking on this. I'm hoping as we go through the redoing the merit rules, we can look at you know, how step increases are asked, because I know that we do it for new hires and only for new hires. And sometimes, you know, I think about that new people that come, they can ask for a step increase, you know, but people that have been working for us for years and we know their work, we know how they work, they've been putting in the time, but they can't ask, you know, to go to their next step. But we'll take a chance on somebody that hasn't even worked for us before we take a chance on, you know, our own, you know, within. So, you know, I just hope that we just have an opportunity to really look at that. And I've spoke on it before, because I'm not one of those people that, you know, believe in someone coming from the outside and they can just automatically get placed on step 5, when many of us who have been working for the district started with step 1. But then someone that has been working for us and we know they work ethics, they're not able to get placed, you know, ask for a step increase. So I hope that we really do look at that, because as a union, and if I was representing Matt, I would ask that, you know, it's considered that he is placed on that next step, especially when he's in a position that is hard for us to hire for. That's another thing. His position is hard for us to keep someone in. So we may want to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mildred. Frank?
Thank you, Mildred.
Trying to lay down.
Frank, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
There you go. I'm sorry. They wouldn't let me unmute. Yeah, I agree with what Mildred said. I have a lot of issues and concerns with step increases myself. I believe everybody should start at 5, or we should just have one step period, which would be 1. Everybody starts at the top, but that's neither here or there. My question to the board is, what's stopping this board here, the PC board, from everyone, and I'll throw out a couple of them: nutrition services, school campus, bus drivers. Why don't they start at step 5, and that's put out there when the applications are going out there before they even apply? I think, in my interpretation of the merit rules in the section that was read previously, that's when you would do that, not after they get hired, because most people don't know that they could ask for the step increase. But if we really need these positions, which we all know we need them really bad, that should be put out. The board should approve that. They should approve that and get these positions filled. I think that would help. Everybody knows that, you know, you could go get a job tomorrow at some other place, you know, apply tomorrow and walk in the door tomorrow. Here is a process. It takes a little bit longer. There's needs to be an incentive to get people in the door. And I think the easy one is start them all at step 5. I know that creates a little bit of a headache, especially for people who already are here. But somehow I think we could work around that too. Anyway, my question again is, can the board approve to start some of these classified positions at step 5? They don't need to come here and ask for a step increase. Thank you.
Vice Chair?
I'm not sure I can answer your question as explicitly as you'd like, Frank. The board, now, and you're talking the Board of Governors, the school board, rather than this commission. They ultimately can look at and examine anything that is put in front of them. I think the thing that I'm learning from this discussion is when we have our special meeting for vacancies, this is not a meeting just to find out, hey, what's vacant and for how long, although, that is part of what we've asked for. It's a meeting to understand structurally, why does BUSD have the vacancy rate that it has? So we'll get some facts about, where are we vacant? How long are we vacant? Are there particular places, where we seem to have persistent vacancies? And then the discussion, and it might take more than one meeting, but, then the discussion is, well, why is this and what can we do? So to your point, when we post the jobs, and I don't know, Erin, maybe you can help me with this. Do we post just the step one compensation or do we post a range?
So we post the range, but we do include information that everybody starts at step one.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because right now that's the policy of the district. But in having the vacancy discussion, these are exactly the kinds of ideas and things that we need to think about so that we can compete and not have vacancies.
One comment. Commissioner Roeder.
I also think I agree entirely with everything that Commissioner Goldstein just said. And one additional point is, I think that is, at least in part, the function of, I guess it's phase 4 of the class and comp study, that the goal, I think, in part of that study would be to figure out what the appropriate salary levels need to be in order to be competitive so that we don't have such difficulty. That may be kind of a pipe dream, but nonetheless, that's the goal, so that we don't have so much difficulty in recruitment for certain positions, because we would be competitive. Now, of course, just because the consultant comes up with what they think is the appropriate salary level for a particular classification doesn't mean that after collective bargaining, that's what that position is going to be. That's going to be up to the union and to the district to bargain over what the salary structure is going to be. But at least that's the first step in the process.
Frank, is your hand still up from your last question? Or do you have another question or comment?
Yeah, just another quick comment. Clarification. Yeah, I'm speaking to the PC board when I say that I believe per the merit rules that they could make that call themselves. If there's a hard to fill position, that they could start them at step 5, or maybe step 3. Pick one. Because we do have some very hard to fill positions, and I think that would help get some new people, these vacancies filled. And I believe per the merit rules that the 3 of you have that power to make that call before, as it's going out to the public, not after the fact. Because we sit here and we hear time and time after, every meeting we hear people come in and say, I want a step increase, and we hear, oh, it's a hard to fill position, and then they state the reasons why. Well, everybody that comes in these positions, they get hired because they have the skills, they have the experience. That's why we hire them. So what would it hurt to hire them at step 5 when they feel, when they come in the door, instead of having to go through this process? We need school campus aid or monitors. We need them. We need nutrition services. We need school bus drivers. So, yeah, thank you.
Without getting into a big philosophical discussion, which we can do when it's time for the vacancy special meeting, organizations are often asked to define a compensation philosophy. And this directly speaks, Frank, to what you're asking. A compensation philosophy, for example, could be an organization says, look, I want to get the cheapest possible labor I can get. I know they're going to come here. I know they're going to stay a year. They're going to learn the job. They're going to get the skills, and then they're going to leave me, to go somewhere else to get better paid. But that's my philosophy. I don't want to pay a lot for labor, and that's how I run my operation. A different compensation philosophy could be more along the lines of what you've proposed, which is I don't want to mess with all that turnover. I want experienced people to come and I want them to stay. I will make a point that putting someone at step 5 when there is nowhere else for them to go, in the next year presents its own problems, because people also won't stay when there's nowhere else for them to go compensation wise, unless there is an extremely strong culture that retains them. But that compensation philosophy is sort of the core basis on which the organization operates. And sometimes when you have a high vacancy rate, it's because your comp philosophy is inconsistent or wrong for the market in which you operate. So, I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure I could tell you what BUSD's compensation philosophy is. And because the Board of Governors controls the budget, that's for them to define. It's for us to execute on, but it's for them to define.
Thank you, Chairperson. All right. Any other comments, questions on this? All right. Well, thank you again. Another really good discussion, bringing up a lot of very good points that we are trying to tackle. And that was one of the main driving forces behind the class and comps study to see where we need to make those changes, where we need to be more competitive so that we can bring on and keep folks. And so, that's part of that conversation, and that conversation is ongoing, and it will be part of our conversation even in the vacancies discussion that we have. So again, thank you all for this discussion. We're going to now move on to item 10 on the agenda, and that's the closed session. So the commissioners will go into closed session. If folks want to wait around until after we're done, we don't have a timeline for that, but we'll come back and then we'll continue with the public portion of this meeting. So you were just closed session. Personnel director, next steps forward. Go on to agenda item 12, which is public comments. So comment. This is the time to allow. I am so sorry. I did not have my microphone on. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So we just were in a closed session. In that session, we discussed the upcoming performance review for the personnel director. We discussed next steps, and we will move on with those. And so now we're going to go to agenda item 12, which is public comments. So if you have a public comment, now is your time to shine. Going once, going twice.
Is there any public?
Well, Charlie's public.
You've already heard a lot of comments from me. We do have Malika.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing now.
And Kimberly. Sorry.
So yes, does anyone have a public comment at this time? And I am not seeing any hands. All right, so then we will go on to item 13 on the agenda, and that is our next meeting. So our next meeting, we have a special meeting scheduled for October 10th at 4:30. And that will be our discussion on the vacancies. That's going to be a very comprehensive discussion. And we alluded to some of that in tonight's meeting. So that's again Tuesday, October 10th at 4:30. And then our regular meeting will be on Wednesday, October 25th, 4:30. And so all are invited to either of those meetings. All right, so with that, this meeting is adjourned.